This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and today we're giving them steel, lads, as we check out the weapons of Holdfast nations at war.
The French model 1777, it's a whole family of weapons. French muzzle-loading firearms are really very good, and it pains me to say that as a British person, as an Englishman.
We have unfortunately been sunk.
Oh yeah, so you have. That's unfortunate.
Well, you know the old rule about captains?
Oh yeah, going down with the ship. Yeah, okay.
Go for it, men. I shall stay on.
You can watch a longer director's cut edition of this episode over on our Patreon, including scenes from Holdfast's World War I DLC, and by becoming a patron, you'll also get early access to next week's Terminator episode.
The 45 long slide with laser sighting. We don't have that, but we do have the AMT hardballer. And for those of you who didn't know, yes, there was a battery pack and some wires running down the sleeve of Arnold's jacket.
But we hope you enjoy this episode, and without further ado, I will throw it over to Jonathan. So you may hear my voice pop up when I'm not actually speaking to you, because it'll be in the game, and also many other individuals' voices pop up throughout this, because communication is key in the Napoleonic era.
Yes, although very difficult without bugles. Right, so we're straight into some loading there. So are we looking here at the standard 1777? Oh, okay, yes, it says down there, Charleville 1XXIII. And actually, interesting they call it that, because on the tang is the correct marking of M.1777, as in 1777. As in the normal calendar year. But Napoleon's doing some weird stuff with dates at this point, so hence we have year 9/13 is what it should say. We've got some nice drill going on there. I can't vouch for it being 100% correct, but some good drill movements. Ramrod is present and correct and is being used correctly. The cock is cocked correctly, the pan is closed, the gun itself is working really well. It's just a shame you can't see that paper cartridge being handled.
Yeah, because they're such a small team, it definitely feels like they've focused in on the major points and maybe not had the resources to do like the ball, the biting of the cartridge, all that stuff. But it is fun that a lot of it is there. And I think for the most part, for the rifles at least, they reuse the reload animations, but we'll see what you think. To me, knowing not a lot about flintlocks, I feel like a generally similar reload animation sort of makes sense for weapons of this nature.
I mean, identical. Any musket or basically shoulder weapon that's military issue, even the rifles to some extent, were issued with paper cartridge, and that limits what you can do. You know, you have to bite first, pour some powder into the pan first, close the pan, and then put the stuff down the front. The only difference in drill comes from the different types of ammunition, really, or if you're a cavalryman with a carbine on horseback, maybe. The Brits certainly didn't fight and load from horseback with carbines, but anyway. This, if I'm reading this and looking at this correctly, is one of these. So the French model 1777, it's a whole family of weapons. French muzzle-loading firearms are really very good, and it pains me to say that as a British person, as an Englishman, but it's true. They're really well made. They come with a proper front sight on that, fairly distinctive, although other countries copied it. Nose cap, end cap with the blade front sight. I mean, you still haven't got a rear sight, but it's frankly superior to old Brown Bess. And the construction that you can see here as well, the barrel bands, big thick steel barrel bands with springs holding them in place. It's just a better way to put a musket together, to be quite honest. Does it matter on the battlefield? Not really. They both work essentially the same way, have the same sort of so-called stopping power, pretty much the same accuracy effectively, despite having, this arguably having a slightly more precise sight to it. But there are different flavors, as I say, of 1777 family weapons, so we might see some different barrel lengths, depending on how much of it they've modeled. Good bayonet action there. I can't recall, or I'm not sure if I've ever known, the details of French bayonet drill. Great that the bayonet's there, it's a key part of this era. It looks really blunt. I'm not sure why, but these things are incredibly pointy, and even though they're not designed for cutting, they have a more acute edge on them than this thing does. This looks like a sort of rubber one for LARPing or something.
We need to close range. My God.
It's basic, but the fact that you have to interact with an ammo box, put the ammo in, and then actually push the cannon into place before firing it is a nice rhythm.
That's fun. Yeah, the vapor trail on the cannonball is is not accurate, but I guess makes it easier to work out what the hell you're doing. Yeah, there isn't really any detail of the crew that we needed to operate this, the ignition systems. By this point, they have flintlock ignition for cannon, which is rather more convenient than a linstock, but that's not modelled on the guns.
We have unfortunately been sunk.
Oh yeah, so you have. That's unfortunate.
You know the old rule about captains?
Oh yeah, going down the ship. Yeah, okay.
Go for it, men. I shall stay behind.
He's singing the lyrics.
Just sitting men of Harlech as we have to row away.
Hear their spear points gleaming in a warrior band and streaming to this battlefield.
Yeah. I don't know when that was actually written, but I don't think it was by this time. I could be wrong. That went down very quickly. It didn't seem to take that much damage before it very quickly went to the bottom. Oh, hello. What happened there? Ah, that's what I thought happened. Caught a cannonball. There should probably be a bit more gore there for getting struck by a, whatever that is, 9-pounder or something. There are so few games that even attempt to cover this.
This ship had massive guns on it.
Yes. I'm not even sure what that's representing. That looks like a 32 pack. Yeah, that's a very odd design. That looks like it's trying to be a British Bloomfield with the breaching loop on the back, but it's not right. And it's huge. Like a 32-pounder or bigger. 48-pounder maybe. I don't know. I don't do naval history, but I've never seen a small ship like this carrying two giant guns on a 360-degree traversing ring that clips through the rigging. That seems unhelpful.
The game calls them 24-pounders.
24s, okay, maybe. They look bigger than that, though. And they have a weird blunderbuss muzzle, like really flared, which cannon don't have. They have a plain diameter bore, and they have a moulding around the muzzle that makes them look a little bit kind of flared, but they're not. So I think as accurate as the small arms look to be, I don't think any of these artillery pieces are strictly correct. So now I am looking at, and it says land pattern pistol. Specifically, this is a pretty faithful representation of the British New Land pattern. So this was introduced in 1802, and this is the version introduced in 1802, and so is the one in the game. You can tell because it has these ears on the butt cap. Later on in the production run of these, they simplified the cap for ease of production, basically. But it has that captive rammer that you see modelled there, where we pull it out, and instead of coming out and being lost, it's retained on this swivel, and the swivel swivels around and allows you to insert the end of the rammer. So you can't lose it, which is pretty great, because you do want to use this kind of thing from horseback. This is a light cavalry pistol.
It doesn't have that device that you mentioned, or it's not usable in the game. You take the ramrod fully out.
Yeah, what we see happen is the ramrod just comes off the gun magically, and actually it's being reversed as well, which, as you can see, isn't how it works. Comes up, and then the thin end remains where it is, and is what goes down the barrel. So that great big flat end is not for ramming a ball down, it's for using your palm if you need to seat the ball. So a nicely modelled version of the gun. I'm sure there's some detail I could quibble with if I had the assets in front of me, but looks fine to me, but the way it's loaded is incorrect. It would be correct for just about anything else, by the way, although typically pistol rammers, you don't reverse. You certainly don't on this one. The way it's being used is correct, one-handed. We're not John Wicking around with this, although I'd like to see someone try. Yeah, bent elbow, cocked wrist, looks pretty good to me. Yeah, I think we've got the best flintlock reloads I've seen on this, despite occasional issues. We're actually seeing, so this has a wooden replacement in there just to cushion the thing if someone were to snap it. It should, of course, have flint in it. And we have our half cock. We're still using cartridge for pistol as well, so bite, pour the cartridge in. That's kind of glossed over here, but it's fine. And then we close the pan. That's for your sort of carry position, and then when you're ready to shoot, pull it to full cock, pull the trigger. that will fall. Push the pan open. Requires a lot of force because you need to scrape hot steel off it. Sparks go into the pan, flash, boom. That's how all flintlocks work. We have a, quote, rusty British blunderbuss, which sounds like a great name for a band. Now, all the ones we have available conveniently to me today are brass barreled, like this one. This is a fairly short, small one as well. Did you get the sense of much spread of shot? Because that's always the myth and the...
An enormous spread of shot and drop as well. Quite... You could not reach out far at all with this thing.
Yeah, it sounds and looks like they've gone for the stereotype trope of the blunderbuss rather than the reality. Which is really, it's just a shotgun, you know? The flare is primarily for ease of loading, because you are typically loading this loose without cartridge, although East India Company, at least I believe, did issue cartridge of shot for theirs, and then it's a kind of hotly debated question as to whether the spread of shot is aided by the flare. I'm in the camp with the late David Weaver that it does not spread the shot. The shot spreads because the barrel's quite short and the pressure is relatively low, and the shot will spread regardless. Like more to do with in proportion to barrel length than to the flare on the end. It's a bit of fashion, it's a bit of ease of reloading. Or loading. Bit of a quirk, but I can see absolutely why they'd want to crowbar a blunderbuss into the game. Why it's rusty, I don't know. I mean, these are still soldiers. They should be keeping their weapons not rusty. But
So what you'll see now is this is me commanding troops. The troops are actually members of our Patreon. I gathered them up from our Discord, and they're all performing valiantly, I would say. So if you hear me chiming in, if you hear my voice, it's actually through the gameplay, hence the officer's accent I've appropriated.
Fire!
Oh my god!
Oh!
I'll have to send you the correct drills so you can get your words of command correct.
Please do. Anything to enhance the experience.
The actual instructions in combat are very abbreviated compared to the full drill, where when you drill troops through, over and over again so they know it second nature, you use more specific commands for different actions, whereas in combat it's quite limited actually to present and fire, or make ready, present and fire perhaps, or percent, P apostrophe S-E-N-T I think is how it's rendered.
The number of times I'm recording an episode or just trying to focus on an edit and some spam call comes in is honestly bananas, and it does my head in. And don't get me started with the state of my email inbox. It's honestly so full of spam, I'm surprised it hasn't been canned and sold as lunch meat. Thankfully, today's sponsor, Incogni, is helping me regain my virtual peace and serenity. The reason I get so many spam calls and emails is because some pesky data broker out there is selling my personal information to the highest bidder. I'm sure there are folks watching this who are in the same boat, but your personal data is yours, and you have the right to demand these brokers delete it. Annoyingly though, brokers make it so difficult to start that process. But Incogni takes this irritating admin and does it all for you. Incogni will scour the web for your information and issue a takedown request on your behalf. And it will also keep a watchful eye out for any other information that may pop up in the future, and help ensure you stay off these lists for good. Use the link in the description and pinned comment or code EXPDEAL to get yourself 60% off an annual plan. It can save you so much time, help you stay safer online, and help bring a little more peace to your inbox and call log too. Thank you again to Incogni for sponsoring this episode, and now I'll get back to the video.
Right, that's a really nice decorated French target style pistol or dueling pistol. This is a bit extravagant even for a French officer to carry into battle, to be honest. Now, we actually don't have, Lepage is a famous Parisian family of gun makers actually, Henri Lepage. We don't have a flintlock one of these, but we do have this, which is very, very similar in style. Early-ish percussion, 1830 maybe. So replacing the striking steel, the hammer, the prison, whatever you prefer to call it, and the cock with the flint in it, with perhaps more familiar in some ways, to some people anyway, the nipple and the hammer. But it's the same basic style. The fashion hasn't much changed in those couple of decades. Different style of decoration. I'm sure they based this on another example that they saw. Well, this is the closest thing that I could lay hands on. Yeah, not the sort of thing you would typically carry in combat, because the chance of you having to throw it roughly to the floor or otherwise damage it, lose it, is very high. So you're probably not going to take your prized dueling or target pistols out with you on the battlefield.
This might be too much of a tangent for this video because, I mean, when else are we going to talk about it? But the Sharps reload method of
bite, pull, spit, tap, in.
Surely, no, that's not very efficient.
No, and it's not. It was never a thing. Some Australian reenactors tried it on YouTube some years ago and found it to be. I think they found it to be ineffective as well. But it's certainly not anything that was taught, and it's not. I don't think it's meaningfully, in the scheme of things, any quicker. And the risk there is that you're not, especially if your bore is fouled. Although they're doing it with a sub-caliber ball, so. But you don't want to have variable velocity by having the ball sit at different heights in the bore, depending on how you load. So that was, I don't actually know where, but I don't think it comes from the Bernard Cornwell books. I think it was invented for the show. I don't know who cooked it up, but it's a fun. It's like the Brennan single shot from Siege of Jadotville. It's that kind of, it's nonsense, but it makes for fun drama. I think with a bit of thought, we could come up with a historically accurate dramatic thing that could have replaced that. But hey, it was the 90s.
That completes today's British TV tangent.
Now, this is a really interesting piece that they've replicated here. We have one very similar to this, but that very pronounced curved stock and elaborately shaped barrel, that was a style. Now, I don't think it would end up in the hands of a British rifleman by any means, but it's based on a real rifle. It says sporting rifle. Yeah, I think they are. That very dramatically swept stock, partly a fashion thing, but also to get your head up into a position where you're behind the sights. That hooded rear sight setup, that goes back to the 1540s at least. We have arquebuses that were acquired for Henry VIII's armies for actual military combat that have a similar hooded setup. But that funnel shape of the rear sight is distinctive to this, round about 1800 period for this style of sporting gun or rifle. I'm not seeing rifle sights on this though.
It's definitely more accurate because the game doesn't use iron sights or anything like that, but this weapon is definitely more accurate. Or at least it felt more accurate than the other weapons.
Yes, so I think I really need to look at this particular type of flintlock rifle. I think they would all be rifles in this configuration, actually, because some of them have pronounced separate front sights. One of ours doesn't, and this doesn't. It appears to use the muzzle moulding, essentially, in a shape of a sort of lozenge. It uses the point of that as the front sight, I believe. I love it when stuff crops up in a game that makes me go and look at stuff in the collection that I don't know much about. Because I don't know much about these in terms of where they emerge from and why. Target rifles, so they are shooting at marks at this point for competition and fun and training. Ordinary infantrymen, absolutely trained and drilled to shoot at targets. They didn't just go into combat without that ability. They were expected to hit things at 100-ish yards. It wasn't as random as people think it was.
And fire rockets, I guess.
Eliott Carbine, or the Eliott Dragoon Carbine. Several different British carbines in use by, let's say 1815. And the Eliott was one of them. Here it is, looking very Brown Bessie with its India-esque pattern buttstock. Critically, a sling bar on the side for effectively a single point sling on a shoulder belt, so that you can, if you need to, draw and fire this from the saddle. But British cavalry doctrine was not to load and fire from the saddle, as we see here. You could do it in an emergency, but you weren't expected to. You can see that distinctive carving there around the tang. That's present on the stock, all looking good. And there's the rammer, very distinctive swell there, where it clips in at the front. Pull it out, away from this lip, so that locks the rammer in. And we withdraw that. It's quite a heavy rammer, which you can use to your advantage. Throw it down the barrel to get the cartridge started on its way down the bore.
One of the more predominant uses of cavalry in the game is to just push around the flanks and take out enemy artillery, because cannon and rocket fire can really do damage.
That's pretty much what light cavalry are for, and dragoons. I mean, originally dragoons were for riding into battle, jumping off their horses and fighting as infantry in line. Dragoons by this era are, I mean, as much as they would dismount to fire their carbines, they're mainly doing light cavalry things. So the curved cavalry saber, light cavalry saber, is really your primary weapon. Pair of pistols, but you do have the carbine that lets you reach out if you need to.
So this is the brown Bess now.
Okay, I can even see some little proof marks there, which at that distance look quite well done. So yeah, in fact, this is quite instructive. So Eliott Carbine, which is quite long for a carbine. The little Paget carbine is half this length for the actual light cavalry. The India pattern musket, or the British Board of Ordnance version of the India pattern musket, or just India pattern, we tend to call it, is what we see here. And as you can see, it's a damn sight longer and heavier, and it's 0.75, not 0.65, firing a 0.69-ish caliber ball. These measurements were actually more varied than people think. But as long as you had that windage, that gap between the ball and the barrel, you would have no problem for the typical duration of a battle and the amount of ammunition you carry, 60 rounds before you have to be resupplied, you wouldn't have any problem with fouling. So you compromise accuracy by reducing the bullet size, but the paper that wraps around that and contains the powder as well, of course, for priming and for charging, crushes up like a sabot around the ball and makes it considerably more accurate. Not accurate, but considerably more accurate.
You mentioned the number of rounds a soldier would carry into battle. Did you say it was 60?
60 in the pouch, but of course you would get resupplied. If it's an all-day affair like Waterloo or something, there would be access to more ammunition. But all you've got in your pouch at a given time is 60 rounds.
There's 35 in the game, but I have never lived long enough to shoot every round. Not once.
That in itself is of course not realistic. If that many people died in combat, this era of warfare would be the worst in history. You know, most people who fought in the Napoleonic Wars did live. And I guess that's been balanced based on the typical, they've tested it out, people get killed quite quickly, so they've gone with what is a gameplay helpful, low amount of ammo. But I'm sort of surprised that it's so low. What do you do if you run out?
The sapper can bring ammo boxes to the front, or, as you are demonstrating, fixed bayonets! To quote one of the most popular Holdfast videos to have ever existed, you give 'em steel, lads!
Give 'em steel, guys! Give 'em steel!
Well, quite.
Don't stop, don't stop.
I'm going to show a selection of field artillery and field guns now. My assistant gunners throughout have been members of the Patreon from the Discord, so thank you again to those folks who have helped me reload and ram, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd say.
So that's a fairly correct bit of kit there with the rammer. The other end is a sponge for sponging out the any burning embers left behind after firing. Otherwise, you ram the next charge down, gun blows up, you've got no hands. Very common issue throughout the history of muzzle-loading artillery. You ideally don't want to be at the business end, but you have to be. The sighting is an interesting thing. So you have a gunner's quadrants and ways to lay the gun, essentially using maths. And you have actual sights as well. Some guns are set up with a sight to enable you to sight as though it's a shoulder weapon. I'm not seeing either of those things going on here. You're just having to sort of wing it. But from at least the 16th century, there were tools to help a gunner lay his gun at a given angle. You'd have to know from experience what charge for what weight of shot was appropriate for what you're trying to do. But then the angle that you lay the gun at with you'd use a level and a quadrant, and that whole thing is kind of fascinating in itself. It's very much just winging it here, which I'm sure happened. I'm sure that happened too.
So you'll see I slow it down here so you can see the range of the counter battery coming at us. I didn't realize when I did this until I've literally just noticed rewatching the clips with you. The guy who gets shot, his name is Cannon Fodder.
Yeah, I did see that. That's very funny. Oh, yeah. Nice slow-mo on the return fire there.
Yeah, the best way to be accurate with these things is to have someone with you that you're talking to that has a spyglass, a telescope, and say, oh, no, you need to be a bit higher. It needs to be a bit lower.
Yeah, absolutely.
Needs to be a bit to the left.
That bit of aiming artillery is pretty correct. The carriages look good, actually. Like, broadly speaking, we had the naval guns on naval pattern carriages. We have the field guns on those big wheeled carriages that we're seeing there. And the garrison artillery there within the fortress has little tiny wheeled, step-sided garrison artillery carriages. But they haven't just stuck the same thing in for everything.
If you can look past me getting absolutely squashed by the enemy cannons, here you can see all the members from the Patreon helping me out as the gun crew and how much faster the whole process is. To the point where we were getting charged by cavalry and we were able to load grape shot to take down enemy cavalry.
That does look vaguely terrifying when the cavalry comes swooping in and cutting at your head and neck. Ah, rocket launchers. Excellent. So the rocket launchers were very much a thing at this point, having been pinched from India as a concept. We have a couple of Hales pattern rockets in the collection, but we don't do artillery rockets particularly well, but I'm not sure many museums do. They're kind of what they look like, giant bottle rockets. And then we have these crazy shoulder-fired things from roughly this period, where they were experimenting with like the Georgian RPG situation, which is kind of intriguing to think about. These will, I presume, be based on a French pattern of rocket that I haven't looked at. They don't look like the British ones.
These were very, very hard to be even close to accurate with. Because as soon as they're in the air, they'll start spiraling and spinning and curving, and it's very much a to whom it may concern sort of artillery weapon in this game.
Yes, and from my limited knowledge of rocket artillery, that's probably accurate. You know, they're quite intimidating and definitely not fun to get struck by. Especially the Indian sword rockets, which had a sword blade that would trail over your head as it flew low over troops.
That does sound terrifying.
I know. If you didn't get hit by an explosive rocket head or explodey bits of metal, fragments, you might get your skull cleaved in twain by a sword blade. Yeah, so I've been intrigued by this for a while. I heard about it a few years ago, I think, and I have wishlisted it. I will get into it at some point. I'm a little wary of how chaotic it seems to be, and your gameplay footage has kind of reinforced that. I think I just need to lean into the fun factor and maybe join you for a round.
If it helps, I know there are clans that put on specific line battles where it's not just encouraged, you have to fight in lines, you have to fight more period appropriately. So maybe if there's anyone in the comments that runs something like that, we can hop in with them, where things are a bit more structured than what I can probably offer.
That, and then we get shot for deserting when we break formation. Yeah, I'm up for that. Short but educational. Yeah, no, interesting. I've years ago I wistfully thought, why isn't there a game with muskets and such like in it, of any era really? There have been a trickle of them over the years that deal with it. There's the History Channel game that American Civil War, Darkest of Days, which was a sort of, I thought, quite a fun time travel-y based game, had a bit in there, but a lot of the reloading is fudged, and they don't leverage the historical limitations of the technology in a way that's entertaining as well as being fun. This looks like it does. All best of luck to the player base and the developers of this.
For the battle are not very well.
Thank you all for watching. Let us know in the comment section below other games, movies, TV shows, or beyond you would like to see on the show, and of course, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out goes to all of our supporters over on Patreon for helping make these episodes and this entire project happen. Links to support Jonathan and the Royal Armouries will be in the description below, as will links to all of EXP's social pages, so be sure to check that as well. But until next episode, thank you again for watching, and we will see you very soon. Set on the step, make ready.
Aiming up into the door.
Aim. Fire! Oh my god!
Oh! Headshot at 50 meters.